Hi, my name is Matt, and welcome to Education Exploration. On this podcast, we explore and learn about people serving in different career industries. The conversations focus on what it takes to reach our pathways and goals to educational and professional success. All right, well, welcome everyone back to this week's podcast. I appreciate you joining me. I'm incredibly excited about the guest that I have on this week. He and I kind of go way back, and just looking forward to learning a little bit about his career and all the wonderful successes that he's had so far. So if you wouldn't mind, please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. My name's Gene Centeno. Yeah, and I'm here in Leander, North Austin area. And so yeah, here I am. Thanks for
Cool,
having me,
man.
Matt.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I appreciate you being here today. So, can you kind of just share with our audience a little bit about your background, kind of like what you've done, in your career, and then we'll kind of just take it from there.
Yeah, sure. It's interestingly enough, I didn't get started, and I know this podcast is kind of geared towards education, and I didn't really get started in education until kind of later on in my professional career.
Hmm.
I was in my early 30s when I decided to kind of take that step, and I decided that teaching and education would be a good field to be in. But prior to that, I've always been a musician. I grew up in a musical family, and music was always a part of my life, and it was kind of something that I always knew that it was going to be a part of my life as far as my profession and personal life. So my background is really music oriented. And that all started it started when I was a kid, but when I was in high school, I started to take it really, really seriously, and had colleges looking at me, and just from some of the accolades that I was able to gather in high school. And that kind of set me on the pathway to want to become a music performance major in college. It's funny because my college career is kind of jaded. It's a little bit in and out because I kept withdrawing from school to do what I love, which is perform music. And I would
Hmm.
go and tour with bands. And luckily, my professors were always cool enough to kind of let me back in and say, "All right, you gonna finish this time?" I'm like, "Yeah, I got you. I'm gonna be there." Uh, but I finally finished college in 2009, and I'm not going to tell you when I started because that would be terrible for your audience. But I finally finished in 2009, and that's when I made that decision to jump into education. I always reflected back on teachers that influenced me. Shout out to Scott McDonald, Linda McDavitt, Gary Doby, Morgan King. I could go on and on and on, really. But I always reflected on them, and what a huge impact they had in my life, and decided that that'd be a natural next step for me to take in my career. And I decided that, and right around the time in 2009 when I graduated college, and I was in my early 30s, and just figured that I'm going to teach. And so that's kind of my background in a nutshell. And I'm still performing to this day, though. So music is still a part of my life, and we'll get into that in a second. But yeah, that's where I'm at right now.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, no, and I appreciate that story. And so, one of the things that I know, and you had already mentioned this, is your unique story about college and kind of what that looked like. And, share as much as you want, it's totally no obligation. But I'm kind of just wondering a little bit about what your college career kind of looked like, because I know you had said that you were coming in and out of different
Yeah,
universities, and I know you started at the University of North Texas, and then
yeah.
you in fact didn't end up graduating from there. And so I know that a lot of our audience members are probably going to be wondering about that. They may be at a certain point in their life where they're like, okay, like I've been going to this university for a while, but it just may not be the right fit for me. And so they may be
Mhm.
scared, to like transfer to a different
Yeah.
university or something like that. But if you can kind of just talk to us a little bit about what that journey looked like for you.
First off, let me say that I think being scared or nervous, that's a natural thing. Anytime you're
Hmm.
going to make a life change, like a significant change to whether it's school or anything major in your life, it's always okay to be scared and nervous, but it's also always okay to take the plunge, in my experience, which leads to great life experiences. But getting back to the question, what did my college career look like? Well, I started at North Texas, University of North Texas, in the fall of '95, directly out of high school. And I did about 1 year there. So from '95 to '96. And, I was a jazz performance major on saxophone. And Played in the lab bands. I played in the what was it? I think the 7 o'clock my first semester, and then the 5 o'clock lab band my second semester. So yeah, for me, I just I hate to use this cliche term, but I think I kind of got homesick. I don't know. I just
Sure.
wasn't digging. I wasn't digging the area, that kind of Dallasy Denton area. And was it so shallow that I just couldn't find any good Mexican food up there? I don't know. I don't. You know where I'm from. We're from San Antonio, man. We got it made there like that.
Right.
But seriously, I just wasn't digging the vibe there, and decided to come back down to, San Marcos, San Antonio, Austin, the area that we're from. And I think it was a good decision. When I came back to this area, I decided to enroll at Texas State, which was then Southwest Texas University. It's funny because, man, this I'm not trying to influence your audience in any way, but I just did a year at North Texas, and then I came back and immediately enrolled at Southwest Texas in the sound recording technology program. Then I joined a band and immediately withdrew after one semester at Southwest
Okay.
Texas. I don't have the normal pathway by any mean.
Hmm.
Like I said, I'm a music performer, and that's what I always wanted to do. And so when I got the opportunity to join a cool reggae band, their name was Zion, and they're from
Okay.
San Marcos, and I just met them through mutual music school friends, and then ended up jamming out with them one night, and then they offered me a position like the next day. So I took it, and they were on the road. They were touring. I had to talk to my professors and say, hey, I got this opportunity, and I'm going to go ahead and withdraw and try this out. This is going to be my first opportunity touring, and I don't want to let it go. And I'm really glad I didn't, because, I got to see a lot of America at a very, very young age, and touring around and playing for lots of people in different audiences. And man, it was a great experience. And I did that, and I played in bands, and I toured around with different bands, and I didn't end up actually going back to school until, when was it, about 2002, 2003.
Okay.
So you can do the math there. I withdrew in fall of '96 from Texas State and didn't get back till 2003. So I just spent all that time in between playing and touring with bands, and getting performance experience and recording experience. And so when I finally got back to school, there was a couple of different set of professors at Texas State, but I met up with them, and they were cool. They were glad to have me back, and changed majors. I went from sound recording technology to back to jazz performance, which is where I was at UNT. I lasted pretty good. I did a few years. I did a few years in college, joined another band, and didn't quite finish. And so at some point, when I was kind of done touring with this, I don't know that you're ever done touring, but
Hmm.
and done playing. But when I was kind of done with this experience, and by the way, this band was Grupo Fantasma out of Austin. They're doing their thing. They won Grammys. That, man, I garnered so much experience with them. Another topic for another day. So when I was done with that experience, I figured that, teaching would be the next best step. And so I needed to finish college to do that. And so I finished all my music credits, senior recital, all that stuff, got that out of the way. As I just had a few core classes to take. So I ended up taking some summer classes at San Antonio College, because I was living in San Antonio at the time. And took a couple of years worth of geology in one summer at San Antonio
Oh,
College, which
man.
which was awesome. Like I begged and pleaded with the professors there, and they were cool. They understood my plight, and they were cool. They just let me do it. I actually ended up loving it, and I considered, like, man, should I become a geologist? Man, this is awesome, learning about the earth and minerals and stuff. No, it was a great experience at San Antonio College, and so I finished up that summer, and was able to graduate, finally get my paper, my bachelor's certificate in 2009. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to teach, but my major was not in education. So I went to an alternative certification school for that, so I can get certified to teach. Shout out Texas Teachers A Plus. They helped me out there, and many others. And I was able to get my certification and begin teaching. And so that's kind of like what my jaded little college history to my first experience teaching looks like.
That's awesome. And so I honestly didn't even know that entire story about you. So that's even cool. And that's part of the reason why I wanted to start this podcast. And I'm like, man, this is so awesome. I do have two questions in my mind, but I'm just going to only ask one of them for the sake of time. But so you have an extensive amount of performance experience. Like
Yeah.
you and I both know that. And so I'm wondering, how is that really kind of, in a way, like fast tracked you through your college endeavor? Like, did that help, like you being out on tour and then coming back into college? Did you have like a new like mindset about that type of thing?
That's a good question because gathering all that performance experience and then getting back into the classroom felt it felt very just on the back burner. It felt very secondhand compared to those experiences, and I would oftentimes just be kind of daydreaming in class and just
Hmm.
thinking about performing and doing what I love. And so I feel like what I studied in college was easy. It was easy for me.
Hmm.
I didn't have any problems. I mean, so in the sense of fast tracking me through it, yes, I feel like it did because everything came easy to me for some reason.
Hmm.
After that, theory classes and music lit and jazz improvisation and all those classes you do as a music major, just everything felt easy for me and very second nature, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, that's completely, yeah, that completely makes sense. And so, and the reason why I wanted to ask that question is because not too many people have that opportunity to gain experience first
Yeah.
before you think about going into, the college lifestyle. And so,
Yeah.
or not college lifestyle, but going into college, right? To
No
study for a
doubt.
specific major, right? And so I sort of kind of did the same thing too. Like I didn't go to college like right away after high school. I waited 2 years and then I just wasn't mature enough and ready for that experience.
Yeah.
And so it does help. And for those of y'all that are listening, that, sometimes you just end up knowing when the right time is. And so I
Yeah.
loved you telling that entire story because you have clearly articulated that there are times in your life where you just have to seize opportunities because you
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
know when they're going to come back around again. Right. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I really do appreciate you sharing that.
Let me add on to that too, that when I finally back in '08, I guess it was no, the summer of '09, the summer of '09, before I got my degree, and I was at SAC in San Antonio taking those core classes, history and geology. Like I was a better student because I was older. When I was younger, like dude, I'm a musician. I was a terrible student. And so I was able to approach it with a lot more maturity. And as far as my core classes, things made sense. And I was able to study with, a more mature angle and perspective on everything. And, so that there's like another side to that, like being a student at an older age, like that's awesome. That's not in which I'm getting ready to do again. So we can talk about that in a while, but yeah, I just wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. And so this is a great segue to my next question because, as you have described how your college experience was very unique, I know that your career experience was very unique as well. And so if you don't mind kind of just transitioning now to what did it look like coming from college into starting a career as a music educator?
Okay, just scary, right? And we talked about that word a little while ago and that emotion, that feeling. Anytime you make a huge transition, I'm not somebody who ever thought that I would be like in a 9 to 5 kind of job, wake up in the morning and then go to sleep at a certain time every day. Like, so that was scary for me because, in my mind, I was like, how am I going to do this? Like, I'm a night owl. I stay up all hours of the night and create music and I write in my studio and I gig all hours. Like, how am I going to do this?
Hmm.
But I think what drove me was that first day, and I was in front of like all those kids, and I saw like all these kind of education lives, so to speak, in my hands. And that's what drove me to really look at myself in the mirror and say, I can do this and I want to do this. I want to be there for all these people that I'm in front of to kind of just pay it forward, so to speak. And that's kind of what drove me to wake up every day and make that transition from what I was to what I am now.
So I'm kind of just, also wondering like what does your career look like? What was kind of your first gig, and then like where did your kind
Okay.
of career kind of go from there?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So my first gig, I lucked out. It was actually awesome. It was at Fox Technical High School in San Antonio. And most first year teachers don't get lucky enough to be in a position to teach high school students. You got to start usually from the ground up, whether that's elementary or middle school first. But I lucked out and I was glad. I was glad that I started that way because I needed time for my mind to like ease in how to educate children and kind of bring my own, I don't know what the term is, but like my musical intelligence brain, kind of bring that down so that I can talk and communicate with children that don't know as much as I do, you know? And so I'm
Hmm.
glad I started with high school because it was a stepping stone to teaching middle school, which is, you know, what I've been doing for the past 5 years. Um, but yeah, Fox Tech High School, and it was amazing. It was scary though. Let me tell you this. I don't know how many times this happens to people though. So I get hired, and I'm very happy about this. And we're getting ready to start summer band. So I'm the assistant, and then there's the head director, and we're getting ready to start summer band. So we do summer band, right? It's cool. It's fun. It's a great experience. Weekend before school starts, right? The weekend before school starts, the head band director gets hired at another campus and ends up leaving Fox Tech. And so here I am, first year teacher, ever doing this. And I have the whole program to myself now. All of a sudden, first day of school, I'm looking at all these kids like, well, here we are, guys. It's me and you. We're gonna figure it out. We're gonna make it happen, and we did, man. We had so many successes that year, and I'd love to continue talking about that year too, because we both have some shared experiences there.
Yeah,
And
of course.
but that was my transition going from what I was to becoming an educator.
Yeah, and then afterwards, did you continue? How long were you there at Fox Tech?
I was there for 2 years.
Okay, and then
Yeah.
you went to another high school in the same district,
And
right?
then
Is
I
that right?
transferred
Okay,
to
okay,
Jefferson High School in the same district, San Antonio Independent School District, which
okay.
has my heart, man. I love SAISD. Love the kids, love the parents, the community. What, man, what a great experience. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. Okay, cool. And so I know you had talked a little bit about teaching middle school, and so I
Yeah.
know you've been doing that for a few years in the Central Texas area. And so,
Yeah.
kind of just wondering, and feel free to just share again, what you want to. But what was the difference like between teaching high school and middle school? I mean, is there?
Dude, it's night and day. It is night and day, as you know, because you've been in both. You've been in
Mhm.
both environments, man. And dude, I can't honestly say that anybody's ever ready to teach middle school. Like you can
Yep.
go through a year of it, and you know it comes time to summer, and you just be like, what just happened? What happened? Am I okay? Is everything okay? And then, and then you don't know if you're ready to do it again the next year, but you do it, and then you do it the next year, and just but it's awesome because the thing I love about middle school, especially music education and band, that's what I do. You're teaching from scratch. You're teaching from the ground up. You know what I'm saying? So you're responsible for what they learn from the very start, which is so different than high school. I've had to do reteaching in high school, right? But certain techniques and certain things that I thought were a little bit questionable by the time they got to high school. But in middle school, you're solely responsible for what they learn from scratch, and so that's an adventure, and that's what I love about that.
Yeah, no, and that's a really great point. And for those of y'all, that are listening to this podcast, in most cases, students do start off on their instrument in sixth grade. Some of them come with some experience, if
Sure.
they've
Yeah. Yep.
taken, piano lessons or voice
Yeah.
lessons when they were younger. But for the most part, you are starting them off in sixth grade. And so
Yeah.
I'm right there with you, man. Middle school band directing is, it's not for the faint of heart. I
It's
think
not.
it takes a very, special person to be able to do that. And so, yeah, I appreciate you sharing those thoughts. And so to kind of sort of transition us from, career to kind of start talking about like just life in general and kind of what you're, going to do in the future. But
Yeah.
one thing I'm curious to know about you is when you think about your career in the classroom and both, performing. So what are some of kind of your key takeaways from this entire experience, of performing and then teaching, and then now again we'll talk a little bit about what your
Yeah.
future endeavors are. But
Yeah.
if you kind of just talk a little bit about that, like what are some positive or takeaways that you've experienced?
It hasn't always been cookies and cake and sunshine. It hasn't always been that. It's been a tough road because
Hmm.
I've had to try, balance and juggle my performance life with my teaching life. And so I'm always learning from that experience and learning from how to balance that. And it's never easy. It hasn't ever been easy, particularly in middle school. It was a little bit easier to do in the high school. After marching band got out of the way, it was a little bit easier to do. But in middle school, I mean, you have to, for lack of a better term, you have to be on point every day, every single day. And
Hmm.
so I can't be gigging late nights. And I've had to turn down a lot of opportunities in the past few years, and kind of turned down positions with bands, and band leaders and musicians and colleagues of mine haven't always been too eager and happy, to deal with that situation with me. But
Sure.
they understand at the end of the day, what I do for a living as well. And so for me, it's never been about, especially while I've been teaching, it's never been about trying to fulfill my performance life more than my teaching life, because
Mhm.
when you have that many lives that you're responsible for educating, like that comes first. Like that,
Mhm.
there's just no doubt that comes first. So that's never been a question, but it has been tough trying to juggle the two, because I love performing. I love to do that. The older I get, though, I'm very choosy with my performance experiences.
Okay.
I've kind of paid my dues, so to speak, in that arena, and I feel like I can kind of pick and choose what I really want to do, which makes it kind of easier for me on the teaching side, right? Because I'm not
Mhm.
worried about taking so many gigs. And the older I get, also, like, the more I kind of like teaching a little bit more than performing too. It's great, man. Life is full of turns and peaks and valleys and changes and stuff. The older you get, you never know what you're going to like or what your interests are going to be. But I never thought I'd dig teaching more than playing, but I kind of do now.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that completely makes sense. And so what does that kind of balance between, teaching and performing look like for you? I mean, I know you said you try to keep a balance of it, but
Yeah.
like how did you go about accomplishing that?
When I first started teaching, I was still kind of like taking a lot of gigs. And then when I started to figure out, hey, I can't keep up both. I kind of kept it to like a weekend warrior kind of a thing with performance. And so that's kind of what it looks like. I play on the weekends. In light of this pandemic that we're going through, I just kind of play whenever I get the, inspiration to do it, which is a little tough these days. But yeah, so, man, I feel so bad for so many of my colleagues and performers and musician friends that, what they're going through right now, from gigging and playing all the time to not making any money and not playing at all. But, I'm one of those ones that was lucky enough. I had a steady paycheck coming from teaching. And so, but basically, going back to what I was saying, just kind of keeping it to the weekend kind of a thing.
Mhm.
And that's how I've been able to juggle it.
Cool. Yeah. No, that's great. And I know kind of I sort of am kind of in the same boat too, where like I've started this podcast, right? And then, I attempted to start a YouTube channel, which I'm trying to revamp right now. And it's,
Yeah.
you and I are very similar that we have this sort of creative, I guess I'll call it juices, right? That kind of like we just got to
Yeah.
get it
Yeah.
out sometimes, right? And so
Yeah.
that's awesome. And I know you do a lot of, studio work and things like that. And I know
Yeah.
you compose. And so yeah, that's awesome. So um, one question that I kind of have been thinking about since the beginning of our conversation is, so knowing where you are right now in your career, and again, we'll talk about, what your plans are, a couple of months from now, but what are some things that you wish you would have known? Because I'm always trying to figure out, okay, when I was younger, like I really wish I would have done this because it would have made my adult life so much more easier. And when I say this, I mean, a couple of examples come to mind. Like, I wish I would have paid more attention in like my English classes because
Yeah.
now that, I'm doing all these extra, things like the YouTube channel and this podcast, like,
Yeah.
man, I'm writing a lot of emails and like I'm communicating with people all the time. Like, I really wish I was better at that when I was younger because now I'm like I'm trying to make up for it. I'm learning like all these different tools and apps and all these
Yeah.
kinds of things. And so yeah, can you talk to us a little bit about what do you know now that you wish you would have known 10, 15, 20 years ago?
Okay. What I wish I would have known is something that I still kind of don't know, that I wish I knew. And
Hmm.
that's how to deal with money.
Okay, right on.
Really, really. I mean, that's when it comes down to it. I was never taught how to save and invest and do things that are gonna help my future self be happier with my past self.
Hmm.
And so those are things that I kind of still want to know. As far as like other things that I wish I would have known, I don't know. I think you go through experiences when you go through them, and they mean what they mean when you go through them. You know what I'm saying? And that all adds up and sums up to who you are in the present day. And so I can't say that I have any regrets about anything in the past. Has my past road been perfect to where I am now? Not at all. Not at all. Made a ton of mistakes, ton of failures, and I'm glad I did. I think the message there is fail and keep trying until you succeed. Right? There's nothing wrong with failing, and I've done it a lot. in many aspects of my life. And, not just my professional career, but and just what I try to do in my own personal life, and kind of the mantra that I try to live by is that I'm a forever student. I'm always learning, and I'll never stop learning.
You were performing. I know that you've had an opportunity to travel, all over the US, and probably, I think even, you've gone and played in other countries too. And so
Mhm.
for our audience, just wondering like, what was that experience and kind of sort of like, but in a way, like, how has that shaped you into the way you think now when you approach teaching, I guess? Because that was something that I wanted to ask
Yeah.
earlier
Yeah.
about how has your performance career influenced the way you teach. So can you
That's
talk a little bit about that?
I can, and it matters differently for the audiences that you're teaching. Really,
Hmm.
it does, because for I think for well, not specifically for high school kids. It matters for middle school kids too, because when you play for them, they can kind of see and experience everything you've experienced through your playing or through whatever you're trying to role model for them. So, but for middle school kids, it's like, everything you've gone through in your life, it don't really matter. It doesn't matter, not to them. To
Hmm.
them, you're just a teacher, man, and you just got to give them the best you can. And then for certain audiences, it does matter because you're able to take a challenging concept or a challenging technique and simplify it for a student real quick, whether that's a music technique or a life technique, doesn't matter. One thing I can say is that, man, some of the experiences that I've garnered in the past, we were talking about traveling all over the US and other countries. That immediately made me think back to this experience I had in London, playing with Prince, and so Prince called our band to open up for him. He was going through his Latin phase, and we were a Latin band. I played with Prince for a few years on and off, because of that, but in London. And I don't know, just you talking about traveling through to other countries, that stuck out in my mind. What a crazy thing that, and I always tell my students that story too. Hey man, I did a night in London with Prince and then an after party with him. But anyway, totally off topic, totally just, not even on topic at all. But you talking about traveling, that made me think of that.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And that's kind of, what I was trying to allude to is that, we often go through life and we're like, man, I remember that moment. And
Yeah.
that moment is really what helped inspire me 3 or 4 years later on down the
Yeah.
road.
Oh
And
yeah.
so I think those are really cool moments. So awesome. Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that story. So as we kind of wrap up our podcast for today, again, I really appreciate you joining me. So
Yeah.
I know where your future is sort of headed. Our audience
Yeah.
does not know.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, what's going to be happening around the corner for Mr. Gene Centeno.
So here I am again, just never settling in what I'm doing in life, which can be exhausting. It can be a little exhausting, but I am freshly resigned from Seal Middle School, where I've been band directing for 3 years, and I'm going to be a grad student at University of Texas here in Austin. Yeah, yeah, trying to earn that master's degree in jazz performance in saxophone. So I feel like, man, education is competitive here in Austin.
Yep.
Like, to stay in this field, it is very competitive. And I felt too complacent without having this degree attached to my name. So I felt like, you know what, I'm at this age. I'm not going to tell you my age, but I'm at this age where it's either now or never that I do this and try to earn this degree. And so that's what I'm going to be doing for the next couple of years. And earning money is going to be challenging as well, because I'm losing my paycheck now. So I'm going to be trying to hopefully make that up with private teaching students, doing private lessons, and trying to get in as many students as I can, and do that while I'm earning my degree at UT, and probably perform a little bit more than I have been in the past couple of years as well. And so, yeah, that's what I'll be doing for the next couple of years.
That's awesome. Yeah. And when I found that out, I was like, oh man, he's going to be going to the University of Texas. Right. And so,
Yeah. Yeah.
amazing music program. And so
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
really like, I'm happy for you, man. And I know
I appreciate that.
you're going to do really well, man. And I was like, yes, he's getting his master's
Yeah,
type
yeah,
of
man.
thing.
I know. Oh man, what a crazy road it's been And who knows what other opportunities are going to pop up in these next 2 years? Will there be an opportunity that makes me pull away from school? I don't know. I don't know. It's life is like that, man. It's just like that. But in my mind, I can see I'm looking ahead and to the next 2 years and finishing up, and yeah, and just continue to do the same thing that I'm doing, teaching and playing, just with a master's attached to my name. And who knows, it might open other doors. Hey, man, let me ask you real quick. Let me ask you a question,
All right, let's do it.
because we have a shared experience at Fox Tech,
Mm-hmm.
and I want you to talk about that experience. And was that maybe one of your first experiences that got you into education? Why don't you tell the audience a little bit about that experience?
Yeah, so I appreciate you asking that question because, what was interesting is about that whole time. And I share this story with people that I know that, and my wife, if it wasn't for my family support, there's no way that I would have been able to accomplish this. But early on, when I decided that teaching was a career path for me, I taught full time for 2 years for free and didn't get paid a salary, nothing. I knew in my heart that this is exactly what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And for the audience members out there, people who are listening to this, that in my opinion, you cannot overlook experience. And
Right.
that was the mindset that I took. And so, going back to your question of, being with you, that in your entire first year, I was learning just as much as you were.
Yeah.
What I'm incredibly grateful for from you is that you let me experiment a lot with, with the band program, with the percussion section and all that.
Yeah.
And then, you know, looking back on that, you were so supportive, and I genuinely appreciate that. And I think my biggest takeaway from all of that entire year is that and for those of y'all who don't know, Gene and I went to high school together. I was a freshman when you were a senior, right? But
Yeah.
I think just having both of us go through that entire first year, almost, as first year teachers in a way. I
Great.
mean, I did
Yeah.
have a couple, semesters experience, but we were
Yeah.
able to learn from each other. And so I was just so excited that you were there. I had been wanting to get back to Fox Tech, and
Fun
the
times, man. Fun times.
fun times. And we learned a lot together about teaching and what high school life was like for all
Yeah.
these students. And I mean,
Yeah.
it's crazy, Gene, because a lot of those students that you and I had that year, they're like married and they have
I know. I
families, and
know.
it's like, oh my
Man, time
gosh.
flies by, man. It just flies
Yeah.
by fast. Man,
Yeah.
you know what I learned from you that year though was how to get organized. Because I didn't know how to get organized. And
Hmm.
so you would sit me down like every day. Okay, and okay, let's do this. Let's make our agenda. Let's do it on a daily basis.
Hmm.
And I'd be looking at you like, what? I've never done that. What do you mean? I don't know what you're talking. Agenda? You mean there's like an agenda and deadlines and constraints? No, I don't work like that. And you would just sit me down. Okay, let's do this. Come on, what are we doing? Okay, we got this, we got this, we got that, and you would just make me list it out. And man, so you helped me out greatly in that endeavor.
Yeah, yeah, no, and I still think about, we have, or I have a couple of guests that are on the podcast, Alex and Caesar,
Yeah, yeah,
and I'm going to talk to them about this whole experience about starting education and all that. But
right,
I think both of those individuals, I mean, Alex giving me that start at Fox Tech, but then you coming in as the head band director and, really accelerating that for me. And then having Caesar, right, on,
right.
in the beginning stages of his career
That
in
was
teaching.
fun.
And that
That
was
was
awesome.
fun, man.
Yeah.
The kids benefited from that.
Yep.
Like, I don't actually know that I've ever seen another situation like that, where
Hmm.
kids benefited so much from that kind of a situation, having you and Caesar there. And I just told you guys, hey, man, do what you do, make it
Hmm.
fun, make it competitive. And y'all just took it by the reins, man. And those kids, man, I think their lives are forever changed from that, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, no. You're absolutely right. And Caesar and I often kind of talk about that, and again, I'll probably highlight this in our episode together, but
Yeah.
with Caesar. And so, it's one of those things where you're right, man. Like that was just the right moment. And without your support and going, above and beyond and saying, yeah, like this is cool, man. This indoor drumline thing is like, yeah,
Yeah.
let's do it.
Yeah.
And you did whatever you could to help us out, and whether it be through finding money for,
Yeah.
going to contests, or,
We did what we could,
buying
man.
the,
We did what we had to
buying,
do. Yeah.
yeah, buying the equipment that we needed. You even did a voiceover for the show, and that was fun, man. Those are some good times. And so,
Good
yeah, I
times, man. You'll
appreciate you.
never forget them. I'll never forget them, man.
Oh
That
yeah,
I'll never forget them.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Cool, man. All right. So to kind of wrap up our podcast for today,
Yeah.
I kind of just want you to share with our audience just some inspiring words, or something that, can really help uplift us, because, like you mentioned, we're going through this weird time right now,
Yeah.
whether you're in education or another profession. I mean,
Yeah.
it's scary, right? It's
Yeah.
the unknown is just that, it's
Just,
unknown. And so, yeah,
yeah.
so we just share some inspirational words for our
I can
audience. We
try.
definitely
I can
appreciate it.
try. I feel like I'm kind of going through the same thing that everyone else is. Just the uncertainty, the fear of the future, and for me, there's going to be financial uncertainty. Right around the corner. So to be inspiring, I don't know if I can be inspiring, but I can just say that live in the present moment, live day by day, and just moment to moment. Don't try to think too much about your future. Don't dwell on your past, and just breathe. Do breath work, man. Take big breaths through your nose and out your mouth, and live in the present moment. Pet your dog, love your family, play some video games. Do what you got to do to get through this, man. Just live in the present moment is what I could say.
Thank you for listening to the podcast. Be sure to subscribe. Episodes are available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. Follow me on social media using the handles @education_explode or @MattEduTech. We'll chat again soon.